I think Canada is more than just the oil and gas industry, but if you want to look at what is a competitive advantage for us in the world, and you want to think about Canada in terms of its strategic interests and what role it should play in the world, what we're best at, better than any other economy or most other economies, is production of primary materials. Oil and gas is more high-tech than the high-tech industry, which is a bit of a paradox because people think it's an old industry, but it's incredible technology. It's one of the most fun industries I've worked in. And that's why oil and gas, but not just oil and gas, strategic resources of all types are important to Canada. You can't outsource resources. It's not possible to produce Canadian wheat in China, or Canadian fish, or Canadian nickel, or aluminum, or oil, or gas, or softwood lumber. It has to be produced in Canada. And because it can't be outsourced, it's really shielded Canada and Canadian families from a lot of what's been happening in the United States. 20% of our economy, dependent on resources, has meant a huge part of our economy couldn't be outsourced. There's a lot of social benefits that come from people having jobs, families being intact with jobs. I come from a homesteader family, so we come more out of the farming tradition. And I think there's a lot of overlap, though, between the entrepreneurial beginnings of the oil and gas industry in Alberta, Western Canada, Saskatchewan, et cetera, and the homesteading tradition. My main business today, though, one is rig business called High Arctic. I'm chairman of that. I was one of the founding directors when it went public. Our main business there is working in Papua New Guinea, which has been fascinating. We have a world-leading safety record, which is, I think, a very entrepreneurial thing that we've done by taking a completely different approach to safety by saying it's actually about quality. There is no such thing as quality work that is unsafe. We work very directly with Indigenous people, and we've had an incredible record of taking people, in many cases, quite literally from living in huts in the jungle, farming yams on the side of a mountain, to becoming crane operators. There's an example of a job that can't be outsourced because it's a resource job in Papua New Guinea. We've been wanting to take some of those learnings and lessons to the Canadian industry to try to do better with our First Nations here and also to do better on our safety record here. But I had this idea, say, well, why go to a place like the former Soviet Union where in theory the oil is easy but the politics are difficult? Why don't I reverse that and say, let's go somewhere where it's hard to find the oil and gas, but the politics will be easy? And so the irony of that, of course, is I ended up in British Columbia and Quebec. We went after new age ideas, looking at new kinds of rock to find gas. And the success in Quebec was enormous. We have 20 TCF of gas that is discovered there. We have more than 6 trillion cubic feet that is established development on hold. It's a giant field. It could replace 50% of Russian imports into Germany, as an example. It's really, truly a big discovery. Of course, what I found is that the politics here aren't all that much easier than the former Soviet Union. Producing it's pretty hard too because of politics. It's currently shut down there with the government having recently passed that they want to terminate our agreements, which we're in the process of protesting. But those are my two businesses. So I'm pretty proud of this, that we decided on our own in Quebec, and it was partly under social license pressure. They do a great job of making sure that there is a watchdog and scrutiny on industry, that people don't try to cut corners and so on and so forth. We are the first company that went and recognized traditional territories and the right of First Nations to have involvement and consultation with regards to development on their traditional territories. No other company in Quebec has ever done that before, and we were the first, and we did make a deal with the Wolinak on the South Shore around Trois-Rivières. If Russia cuts off gas, why doesn't Canada supply it? Getting back to our role in the world as a best in the world producer of primary resources, why are we not the producer of last resort? When anywhere in the Western world you're being pushed around by authoritarian states, why is Canada not that reliable supplier that you can count on to keep you running when there's a crisis? The answer is we could. And we have the gas reserves. It is without doubt the very best source of supply for Northern Europe from a geographic point of view and a geopolitics point of view outside of Norway, outside of Europe itself. It's Canada. Of course, we became the best in the world. The scrutiny has been incredible. We were forced to become the best in the world, and I'm not sure it's because there's a bunch of Boy Scouts running around in the oil and gas industry. I think it's because the world and the environmental movement globally put incredible scrutiny on oil and gas. It forced us to become the best in the world. But I would say we really have to get out of this idea of, hey, we should do this and not that, or we should do alternatives but not oil and gas, or we should do oil and gas and not alternatives. It seems to me quite clear we're going to need all our energy choices. We've just seen what happens in Germany when you put all your eggs in one energy basket. The world only works because it has energy. There's a fundamental problem with alternatives, and they need to solve it. They're using more land per joule of energy, not less. They're using more materials per joule of energy, not less. This is a problem they've got to fix. And you know what? We should all hope they do, because I think we're going to need their energy. The world should be very thankful that a resource as important and critical to the world as the oil sands is in Canada, because who else would go to the lengths that we have to produce it as cleanly as possible? And we now see this major investment coming through Pathways into making it zero emissions. We're going to capture and store all the emissions underground. So now we're going to become one of the lowest emissions forms of energy production. Well, who else would have done that if it wasn't Canadian? So let's be thankful in one sense. Again, let's thank the environmental movement for putting the scrutiny on us. But then the world, I think, can also thank us for that we've answered the challenge. We are the best in the world.